Ready. We live. We hot. Well, the mics are hot anyway. We'll we'll let the public decide on, or maybe we won't. We won't open it up to a voting. Maybe that wouldn't be the best of ideas. Hello, everyone, or at least a few people. As people are coming in, saying hello. Gonna do a little Rockies podcasting for you today. Been a lot of stuff on the Twitch channel today. Where's my there we go. All right, Patrick, do you think you're ready to do a podcast?
Let's go podcasting.
Let's do it. Let's cast the pod out into the wherever pods are cast to.
Let me get my lure ready first and foremost. Where are my lures?
Lures. We were dad joking it up in here today.
My rod is ready to cast a pod.
Manscaped, I hope.
Hey now.
All right. That's the universal sign for here we go.
That's how we make pizzas in New Jersey.
Is that where you're from?
Let's make a pie. No, I've heard. I've never been, but I've seen a lot of documentaries on it.
Seen on the news and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a real catch me if you can kind of guy, so you have no idea where I'm originally from and my backstory.
Right? Love it. All right.
Dino Bravo is my father, so I mean, oh gosh, we're live.
Oh, Dino Bravo. Welcome into the DNVR Rockies Podcast presented by Strava Craft Coffee. Use that promo code DNVR20 and you will get 20% off your purchase of that delicious CBD-infused, life-changing coffee. I am your host, Drew Kreisman. I am the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me is our beat writer, Patrick Lyons. We've got a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to take a little bit of a walk down memory lane, look at some interesting facts from the past. We're going to get to some of the questions and comments we've had from all of you, whether you're joining us just now here for the live on Twitch or Twitter or Facebook or on YouTube, actually. Or if you've responded to the all-time Colorado Rockies team that we put out. We got some interesting ones on Twitter that I wanted to read through and look at and respond to. There are some William Rosario fans out there, and we're going to address you all. But first, I wanted to begin today, Patrick, even though we're a little bit out, because we're all itching for something that's a little bit more current. And while it's a little far away, it's starting to feel tangible and real. We have no idea still if we're going to get a baseball season, but we do know we're going to get a baseball draft. It's going to be weird, but it's going to be. So let's get into all the ways it's weird and different. And it's just a 5-round thing as opposed to the 40 that it normally is. There's a lot of other stuff in here, but are you excited? Is this something that we can sink our teeth into and really grab on, even though we still don't know when the next time we're going to see some baseball actually maybe?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting event for baseball fans to sink their teeth into, particularly because it's an area I think a lot of baseball fans don't have a large dearth of knowledge. Like the NFL draft comes and you've already been scouting players, right, in college football, and maybe by the end of the 3rd round you haven't heard of half the players, but you maybe at least know what university they go to and whatnot, and you have a general idea if your team did well or did bad, and you're immediately going to see those players in a few months' time. Whereas with the MLB draft, it is the only of the 4 major sports drafts that takes place during the season. I think the same even applies for soccer and then MLS. So it's something that gets overlooked, I think, a lot. And because the players, it takes them so long to finally get to the majors and even make an impact, and so many of them never even make it that far, that it can be something that's easily overlooked. And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And I even myself, don't dive too deep with, who did the Rockies take in the 15th round or beyond that. And over time, again, you see those guys work their way up through the minors, and you say, okay, now this guy is in Nashville or in Lancaster, and now he's a little more tangible. Now he's someone that I can keep my eye on and have a better idea of who he is, how far he's developed, what the Rockies saw in a certain player. But that's so much harder to do when they haven't even played a single game of professional baseball. So this is a good opportunity for fans to really latch on to something new, much like they did with the KBO. Yes, it's baseball. So the general concept is there for baseball fans to latch onto, but some of the different nuances and the players, you don't know who the players are. And the
Right.
players that you do know were ones that were not very good in MLB, but they're great in South Korea, and there's a history there, and you're learning about the different teams. And so I think a lot of that's going to happen with the MLB draft, especially with the coverage that we're hoping to provide our subscribers and listeners to this podcast, and really, inform listeners about the difference between the high school level and the college level, besides just the talent. Um, but the major conferences and what's going to be lost by rounds 6 through 40 no longer being a part of this year's draft, and some of the creative moves that organizations are typically able to do in a draft. And hey, what about international free agents? Raimel Tapia, he was never drafted. Why not? Well, the MLB draft this year, I think, is a good opportunity to address all of those questions and more.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, which is everyone who's, hearing my voice right now, don't know why I set it up that way. That's how podcasts work. We're going to be there. We're still figuring out the exact details of it, but this much we know: we will have live coverage for you on all those video platforms that we talked about earlier. We'll be saving that into podcast segments so that we can break it up. So we'll be doing pre-game, pre-draft coverage, during the draft coverage, and post-draft coverage, where we, of course, analyze everything that the Rockies have done and things that the teams around the Rockies have done. Obviously, we'll have our eyes on what the Dodgers and Giants and Padres are doing, and Diamondbacks. And as Patrick pointed out, we're not also going to insult your intelligence by treating it like it's the NFL draft or the NBA draft, and talking about how this fourth round pick for the Giants really could turn the tide of the NL West in 5 years. Like, we understand what's going on here. We're gonna that actually leaves us a lot of room to have a lot of fun with this too, and do things like pick our favorite names in the draft, in each round of the draft, play games like that, get you all involved so you can come on and share your draft strategies, whether you think a team should be highlighting positions of need and going after that, taking the best overall player, looking at things organizationally, the way I kind of do with the Rockies. We'll share that. Patrick and I will, come up with sort of our priority lists and share that stuff for you guys. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a lot of research, and we're going to really just blow out the coverage on this thing. So make sure you're around June 10 for pregame, during game, and post game. Though, of course, by game we mean draft, because we don't have games yet.
And the draft itself will go on at 5 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And, the Rockies have the 9th pick, so they're going to be, pretty early. There's going to be a lot of talent on the board, and depending on what teams want to do, there's quite possibly a little more strategy this year than in years past, a different type of strategy. There's a lot of depth with college pitchers right now, and you say, all right, well, you got to nab one of those top arms, or you say, let's get a hitter, and we'll grab an arm, later on in the back end with our compensation pick in the first round. So there's a lot of different strategies that can happen, and we'll discuss and break all of that down, and try to figure out, hey, what will the starting lineup of the Rockies look like in 5 years from now? Because that's just simply how long it takes for these guys to develop. And we'll definitely do everything in our power to really provide the best show possible, and really make it fun, because there's not a lot of video on these guys. Their spring season was cut short. They only got in a handful of games. It was funny when we had Matt on the other day, his UC Santa Barbara Gauchos, they ended up beating number 1 UCLA. So I was like, oh, that's a fun news story that if we had college baseball right now, I think there'd be a lot more folks getting involved in that as opposed to the KBO, or in addition to the KBO. And again, you would learn a lot more about these players and their journey and the different universities that certain players have come from. Vanderbilt is probably one of the finest universities for producing baseball talent in the nation. And so many of those guys in the offseason, from David Price to Sonny Gray, Dansby Swanson, they go back to Tennessee each and every year to work out in the offseason with those guys. Same thing, I think Yonder Alonso does at the University of Miami. And so there's, college baseball and minor league baseball, they're developing players, but college baseball is where the hearts of these players really rest. As fond of a memories that certain Rockies players might have of playing in Colorado Springs, that was a stop on their journey. And I'm sure they got to know plenty of people in those places, but when they were developing as human beings, a lot more so during those college years, that's going to be the place where their heart is. They're a part of the alumni, right? So it will be interesting breaking down all of that and more on June 10th. MLB Draft. We got it.
All, like Patrick said, we'll have as much video as we can find on these guys. We will collect everything we can. Of course, we're going to have stats out the wazoo for you. If you're not sure where the wazoo is, check and, Manscaped. But also, we'll be able to run through the history of it. We'll have plenty of time as maybe other teams are drafting players, and we're keeping up to date on that a little bit, but keeping the conversation around the Rockies, looking through the history of the draft and some of the picks that have worked out, some that haven't. I think it's interesting. The first question we got here on the live came from John, and he says, will Jeff Bridich continue the tradition of picking bad players, which is, of course, a fun joke to make, and we can all point to certain years in which the Rockies, both during Bridich's tenure and before, have completely blown picks. The most recent one, obviously, being Riley Pint, though we don't know for sure that he's never going to pan out. So far, he just hasn't been anywhere close to what you want out of your first rounder. But the interesting thing, and we'll be able to dive into this much more deeply, is that the Rockies have done relatively well in the draft recently, and really in the time before leading up to this run of relative success in 17 and 18. And it was propelled largely by successes in the draft. There's a couple of trade acquisitions in there. You got Marquez coming in to do some things, some relievers. Pretty much the entire bullpen has come from outside the organization during those years, other than other than Carlos Estevez. But yeah, we'll be able to dive into that a bit more as I drink my Breck Brew. And I have the Strawberry Sky right now because my girlfriend Caitlin has drunked all of our Mile High Copper Lager. It's our favorite. Katie? She's she gets the dips. So she's gone back to. I'm working from home, but she's gone back to like actual place of job things. So when she comes home, she gets the beer she wants. That is her beer of choice. I've found it is a lot of people's beer of choice. You can get it in that Breck Brew 15-can sampler. They can deliver it to you. You can get it delivered from Davidson's, or head to your nearest grocery store like a King Soopers. Get some food from the farmhouse if you're close enough to the Breckenridge Brewery location there. Call 303-803-1380 from 12 to 8 p.m. You can pick it up, and if you use the code DNVR, you'll get $5 off of that situation. If you're like me and you got the Strawberry Sky as your fallback, you're in a pretty good spot. But that Mile High Copper Lager, just gorgeous drinking. I'll tell you that much. It's gorgeous. That's the word for it.
And even if you're not in the neighborhood of the farmhouse, take a drive. I did it with Bojo's last week, where I was really building it up. I said, "Oh, I'm going to earn that Colorado mountain pie," and drove all the way down to Arvada. I have one closer to me in Longmont, but I said I just had to get out of the house, see some of the beautiful views going from Boulder, coming back, whatnot, and it was worth the round trip, of course. So again, even if you're not in the neighborhood of the farmhouse, go for a drive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually on my to-do list for both of those places. Um,
Gas has never been cheaper.
Also true. Also true.
I had not gotten gas since basically early March. So I'd gone 2 months without getting gas because I'm a good boy / nerd. So I stayed home, was quarantined, only going out to the supermarket. And because of the groceries I'd purchased at King Supers, you get a discount. I don't know if you frequent this or not, but when you
Oh,
go and
sure.
use their gas station.
Oh, yes.
And so gas was $1.49 a gallon. And
Goodness.
then because it had been so long, I guess my points had racked up. I got $1 off of a gallon, and I pumped in
49
15.
cents.
I pumped in 15 and a half gallons, and it cost me $6.50. I've never in my life, since I've
People
even
in the
gotten my
future will
license,
not believe you. Yeah.
it was insane. And then I was gonna, how you go to top it off, you're like, it's at 6.48. Let me go ahead and pump it. And as I'm doing it, I immediately realize, because it's only 49 cents a gallon or 48.9 cents a gallon, I would actually have to be holding on to it for a while for it to go up 2 pennies. So I didn't even have it at a round number. It stayed at 6.48 because I'm like, this tank's going to overflow for 2 cents of gas because it's 49 cents a gallon. It's insane.
You gotta get out to the farmhouse and Bojo's now. There's no excuse. And Ouroboros, who asks here in the comments, for the record, it's my second strawberry sky of the day, one for TDSP, one for this podcast, the Denver Sports Podcast. If you're wondering, if you want to be like the cool kids, we call it TDSP. That's cool. It's fine. Nothing to it really. If you're wondering what in the hell I'm talking about, once a week, a group of us get together. We cross all the sports up. We talk cross sports. Today was a lot of uniform talk. So AJ and I mostly sat there silent while RK and Eric talked about all of these new uniform ideas. You really should have been on for that one today, Patrick. You would have been a much better Rockies representative to discuss uniforms. I was worthless.
Yeah, the Rockies haven't had too many designs, but they've had enough different things that we don't see quite as frequently that could be implemented. Of course, the sleeveless white striped uniforms, which I had forgotten about until I dug out an old Carlos Gonzalez bobblehead, and I said, okay, this was an interesting look. I think we've also seen through the Rockies review, and Kale has been putting together some great photographs on the graphic side, where black vest with purple sleeves, not a look we get anymore.
Yeah.
And I also think there's just some general overall opportunities to have a little bit of green inside,
Okay. So
purple
that's
and white and black. It's there. We see it on some of the older logos for Coors Field. We saw it for the All-Star game, and man, green and purple really work.
that split our group today, and I think it splits the audience. And I said this on the other podcast, so sorry for double dipping, but people show me Rockies uniforms with green in it probably 10 times in a year. It's not like this comes up a lot, but it'll come up, and people bring Rockies things to my attention. I can't imagine why they would do such a thing. And I would say about 1 in 7 with the green in it, I go, ooh, I like that. And then the other 6, I'm like, get that away from me. This is problems. Part of it may be I'm with Ouroboros here, even though he was making fun of me just a second ago. Says, love the Rockies purple jerseys. Purple is criminally underused in sports, and the purple-black combo is incredible. I totally agree. It sets the Rockies apart. They've got their own color that no one else in Major League Baseball has. I love that about it. And when the green starts to clash with the purple, I'm like, hey, get away from my color, bro. But sometimes it works. So
it does.
You make a good one, bring it to me, and I will incredibly and artfully decide if I like it or not.
Well, there's only one team that has green, and so okay, yeah, that's the color of the
Mhm.
Oakland A's. That's
Mhm.
fine. Not trying to really encroach on that. They're more of a Kelly green, right? Like the brighter
Mhm.
St. Patrick's Day colors. In fact, they've even tweaked their shade of green in recent years. But I think just the darker shade of green looks good. I think in the early days of the Rockies, so before they hosted the All-Star game in '98, there were a lot of random companies that I think made Rockies memorabilia, and they utilized green, probably not in the best way. So I think if, like you said, one out of every five or whatever it is looks good. So I think knowing full well what works and what doesn't, I think you could hammer out something that looks a lot better. Again, it would just have to
So,
be done with the right, aspects. And I mean, you go back and look at the batting practice slash home run derby jerseys worn. Um, I think it was the American League had the green for the home run derby and in the '98 All Star game. It looks great. You can even see it on the patch, like in some of the
mhm.
photos from the Blake Street Bombers when they've got a Coors Field patch on it. It's got some green on there, and I think there's even maybe some red for the brick facing. But I think that can be something that's utilized. Start it off subtly. Do it very subtly,
Right.
and then it'll grow over time. It becomes like an alternate jersey,
Mhm.
alternate hat, whatever it is. Then fine. If it goes away, it can come back again. That's really where the potential is. But I kind of respect the Montforts, you know, old school way of thinking and saying, no, we're gonna stick with interlocking CR. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe it's not very 2020, but look at what the Yankees, they've had the same logo
Um,
forever, and it's just classic, and that's nice. Astros have had a million, Diamondbacks have had a million, the Rays are getting up there, the Marlins have had a million. So
right.
you got to have some respect, and sometimes you say, actually, that's cool that it's in the
And the
minority, that it's
CR
one
is
of the
dope.
few.
It's just
It is,
clearly
yeah,
like it's just good. It's
yeah,
just
yeah. There's nothing.
clearly
There's nothing wrong with it, and it is good. And I don't want to say like, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing great with it. It's great. It's just classic. It's clean. Love it.
yeah. All right. Well, wasn't didn't know we were going to get into the uni talk, but love it because yeah, I know that that's something a lot of people are really interested in. I don't know that stuff as well. I can just look at it and go, "Ooh, I like it," or "Ooh, I don't like it." Um, Before we leave completely, though, it feels like it's farther back there, but let's reel the draft conversation back in really quick. Before we move on with other topics of conversation, I wanted to set the stage in such a way, and I'm actually not sure if you even agree with the argument that I made in an article that I published today, Patrick, where I suggested that the new rules for the draft, which I will also admit and probably should have put as a caveat in the article, I understand to some degree. I understand the draft had to be different. It couldn't be exactly the same. And I'm not suggesting, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I don't have the right answer. So I am kind of saying, hey, you did the wrong thing or you're doing something. I'm not even saying they're doing the wrong thing, actually. That's not even my position. Wrong or right, I don't know. What I do know is what it looks like they're going to do here, which is having 5 rounds and then basically letting anybody after that sign as a free agent if they can or if teams want to. And there's a whole, we could get into that. At some point, we'll get into the nitty gritty. We'll see if it comes through in the conversation if we need it here. Just trying to lay the groundwork. I feel like the Rockies will be uniquely negatively impacted by this. I think it hurts a lot of small to mid market teams just in general. Um, but I think the Rockies in particular are going to be bit probably in the long term by this limited draft. What do you think?
Yeah, and absolutely. The biggest pieces, the mid to small market teams, are going to suffer the most from it. By not having a lot of the flexibility. Typically, what happens is, each slot from the first to 10th round has a dollar amount, and ultimately, what you could do. So, ultimately, what you could do is pay guys less than what they're worth. And like, well, why would they take that? Well, Rockies had the ninth pick. They could tell a guy who was maybe supposed to be late first round, early second round, that we're going to take you ninth, but we're going to take you for that slot value late in the first, right? So we're going to give you probably the high end of what you thought. And that pick was only worth a couple $1,000,000. Now they've got extra payroll to convince a kid that they really like, who maybe is, signed a letter of intent to go to Vanderbilt or UCLA, and say, look, we're going to give you this money. Don't go to school. Come play for the Rockies, and we're going to pay you more than the slot value is, and you can balance it out. That's one of the things that Houston did. That they got creative. Carlos Correa ended up, playing out really well for them, but he wasn't the clear overall number one. They got him for a little bit less, and it allowed them to sign Lance McCullers Jr. I think they even used some of that money for Dax Cameron, which he was later flipped in a trade. It might have even been Roberto Osuna. But they got creative, and they ended up getting a lot more depth. And
And
that's
the
what
Rockies
Colorado needs is depth.
themselves, yeah, and the Rockies themselves have implemented a slightly less extreme. They haven't done it quite the way Patrick is describing. What they've sort of done is, like, when there are two guys who are about equal on their board, and they did this with John Gray with the third overall pick, where they paid him less than the slot value, with an understanding that they were going to spend that money, and that became Ryan McMahon money in that exact draft. And so it wasn't necessarily that they took a player who they thought, maybe would have gone a bit later necessarily, as they have specifically taken guys they knew would sign for under slot value so that they can use that money later in the draft. And they've used it to get guys like Ryan McMahon, Dom Nunez, some of these other guys who were gotten in second, third, fourth, fifth rounds.
Yeah, it's unique to baseball. It's almost like it becomes, I don't want to say literally, but it becomes exactly figuratively fantasy baseball, where now you go, well, I like this guy at this price, and which is going to allow me to, save up some money later on down the line. The Yankees were able to do it last year, and they signed a guy that was earmarked, I think, for University of Vanderbilt, Anthony Volpe. And they were able to take him, even though it seemed like no, that he's not going to sign. So you can get really creative, and when you lop off the 6th through 10th round, now you're not going to be able to get some of those bargains. You're also not going to be able to pick guys up like Sam Hilliard, who was a 15th round pick, however long back, and that
Just a couple of years ago.
yeah. So they're going to suffer. All teams are going to suffer in that way. But as you were able to point out in your article, I definitely recommend everybody to go and take a look at that. You did a good job kind of elaborating how, frankly, if if you were a player of any importance and really wanted to gamble on yourself, and you wanted to develop, because you got a long way to go. You got a long way to go. And you were a pitcher in particular. Why would you want to have a 5 ERA in Colorado? You're going to lose out on money on arbitration, and so they're going to get their share of guys, right? They're going to look at the depth chart. It's like when you sign a letter of intent to a university, you look who might be ahead of you on the depth chart, and you go, all right, maybe by my sophomore year I'll be a starter, or I might be able to challenge right away my freshman year. And when a lot of guys start signing with the Yankees and the Red Sox, and an organization that has a great ethos, like the St. Louis Cardinals, and develop guys, a handful at a time, and you go, well, shoot, I'm going to be blocked a little bit here in these organizations, or I might be even used as a trade chip, and I don't know that I want to be tossed around. You know what? I'm going to have some, relative security, with the Rockies, because they don't tend to trade away a lot of their prospects. They are loyal to their guys,
Any of them ever.
and yeah, and you're going to say, well, look, I have a bit easier path to the majors. And you even look at the class, and you can even, if you're only drafting 5 guys, imagine if Colorado takes, and this isn't far-fetched by any means, they take 3 college pitchers, or they take 3 pitchers this year's draft, 1 outfielder, 1 infielder, and you're a catcher, you go, all right, there's room for me in that Rockies organization. I could be playing, in low A Asheville either next year or in 2022 and be a starter. So, okay, I'm going to go. Now, granted, the Rockies have to wait for the carousel to stop, before they can now go and get those guys. They're going to be the last ones at the
Right.
table to kind of pick up some of the scraps. And again, as you articulate in the article, that's the disadvantage that they're at. And it'll be interesting to see, how this continues going forward, because next year's draft most likely will be 20 rounds, very possibly, if not less. But I think they agreed upon, 20 rounds. And, it's just 1 year of ability to, or really to have the opportunity to help develop guys in places like Boise and in Grand Junction. Now they're going to be doing it in the complexes. So it's a shame that it has to happen this year when the Rockies have, a lot of money. They have the 9th pick. They have a first round compensation pick in the back end in the early 30s. And they're not going to be able to tap into that like they would have, any year, in the previous few.
Yeah, it's certainly frustrating. I still think there's ways that the Rockies can come out of the draft with a very successful one. I think anyway they were set up to try to take guys who were a bit closer to the big leagues, which I think is also going to be something we're going to see a little bit more of an emphasis on, with all of the question marks Patrick just illuminated about the history of the minor leagues. Taking that high school kid like Trevor Story, who you can put in Casper 1 year and then low A the next year, and then high A, and then double A, and then triple A, and then triple A again. And then like that path is going to be harder to envision for some of these guys, and the more polished products. I think it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to pitching, if there was a cynical way to talk about a draft, or maybe like a franchise tag in the NFL, or like signing guys up like Herman Marquez early, if you want to be skeptical or cynical about framing that, you'd say you don't want them to have the choice. You when you draft somebody like a John Gray with the 3rd overall pick, he knows in 2013, I'm with the Rockies. I've got 3 years to get ready for Coors Field, and I'm going to have to pitch there for at least 4 or 5 if I want to have any kind of career at all. That's just the way of it. You give those kids a choice. Pitchers aren't going to choose to come to Colorado. We've seen it for 27 years.
And, we have an idea of how good I don't want to say scouting department, but the coaches, those on the developmental side, how good of a job they do in Colorado, but we don't know what the agents think. We don't know what they're telling players. So, when you get drafted, if you're 18 years or younger, right, you're coming out of high school, you've got 5 years before you can be put on the 40-man roster. I mean, you could be put on a 40-man before that. But if we're talking about the Rule 5 draft, you only control the rights to a player that's in high school for 5 seasons. After that, you could lose them. So, okay, you're saying the timeline is 5 years for a high school player. For a college player, it's 4 years. Well, shoot, if you draft a kid who's 22 versus a kid who's 19, wait a minute, that college kid is 3 years older. He might not have the same upside, right? But he's 3 years older, and you only have 1 less year to develop. According to my math, that means he's got an extra 2 years of development. So in this draft, if you're going to go ahead and take a high school player, you've got, again, still 5 years to develop him, but you have no minor league baseball this year.
Right.
You have no short season, most likely. Next year, that's washed away. So, you potentially have to develop a guy within 3 years, and he doesn't have a lot of experience, riding buses and other just little nuanced things about becoming a pro ball player, and his growth could potentially be stunted. So we might see a record for the fewest amount of high school players selected within those first 5 rounds, for that reason. Or again, you play the odds and say, well, let's take all the high school players, because now the college guys, they've got less of, less flexibility, especially if they're college seniors. Where are they going to go? They've got no choice, right?
Yeah.
The juniors, they might want to just go ahead and make that jump. So it's so tricky. It's so hard, and it's really unfortunate for, thousands or 8,000 players who are not going to get drafted, are not going to be in the system, are not going to ultimately get paid what they were hoping to, and their families, the investments that they've made. One of my favorite things to see on Twitter and social media is the families and parents getting an envelope from their recently drafted child a year or two ago, and they open it up and it's a letter saying, hey, the deed or your mortgage has been paid off. You have zero debt.
No.
Because the kid goes, shoot, I just got paid $3 million to play baseball. My parents, they only owe maybe $750,000 in debt. Usually it's probably much less than that, you got to imagine. And you go, I can pay off your debt because you invested in me. I'm going to keep the rest for myself, but it's the least I can do to thank you for everything that you've invested into me. And now, after the first 160 kids are drafted, that check is $20,000, and it's not even up front. It's played out over 2 years. So it's very sad. It's very, very sad for those kids.
We'll dive more into this, and I have a lot more thoughts on, like, I've only basically written so far on like the technicalities of how I think this is going to potentially hurt the Rockies. I think in the long term, there's a lot more, and we'll talk about the long-term effects that this is probably going to have on the minor leagues. And we've already, especially if you followed Patrick during Minor League Mondays, and we talked to Corey Sullivan about it, the possibility of there not being these minor league teams in Colorado anymore. And I have plenty of thoughts on the disadvantage that puts the Rockies at. But we'll have to get into all of that as we continue to build up for it. While the wait for the baseball season continues to go on indefinitely, the wait for the draft is now at least under a month. So that's pretty exciting. And the wait for DraftKings is over. Completely over. No more wait. There's legal betting in Colorado now. And before you know it, all of these sports will be back for you to bet on. And the best way to get in on the action is with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. DraftKings, yes, that's DraftKings, has launched an online sportsbook created by fans for fans. This isn't some offshore operation like other gambling sites. DraftKings is a legitimate sportsbook based right here in the U.S., so you can be confident that your funds are secure. You can bet wherever, whenever. You don't even have to leave your house. And there are plenty of things that you can bet on now, not just the UFC and the KBO, though those are some really fun things to bet on. We've got future bets now on baseball if and when it comes back, the NFL, things like that. There are pool survivor bets on TV shows like Chopped and Shark Tank, and I would assume The Bachelor. I would just assume. And we've got unique bets for you, our DNVR members. We've got DNVR lines that are exclusive to us that we have helped to come up with and craft for you. I know the Broncos have done a lot of fun and interesting things. They've even got a DNVR bet show going with RK and Dr. Andre 1000 or whatever the hell they're calling him. It's a phenomenal show. They run some KBO highlights for you. They get into the over-unders. They're having a fun time. We're having a fun time, and you will be having a fun time if you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code DNVR when you sign up. For a limited time, all new users can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook has a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Don't forget, enter code DNVR and get your sign-up bonus only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25-time playthrough. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-522-4700.
Okay, take a breath. Breathe. While you do that, I'll point out that you are starting to be able to gamble on some other sports like rugby. If you're interested in the Parramatta Eels versus the Brisbane Broncos, obviously Broncos are the way to go for that. Bundesliga. Do you know what country do you think the Bundesliga is?
Isn't that an Italian soccer league?
No. Go northwest a little bit.
Oh,
no. Sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with European geography. It would be Germany. Be Deutschland is the Bundesliga.
Bundesliga.
Thankfully, the most of the planet is kind of getting back to some semblance of normalcy. So yeah, there's some more games going on. KBO still going strong with the bat flips. There's 2 games on tomorrow, Drew. Will you be watching both games?
I will be watching the games that are on at a reasonable hour. My Twitch stream this morning, as I was playing playoff NHL hockey, were letting me know because they had all just woken up from there because they're hardcore and they do what they do. They had their KBO situation going, and they were letting me know that my Twins had their game rained out, and so we'll be playing a doubleheader, and I will be catching at least the first half of that doubleheader. Headline viewing, marquee, mark it down. I also realized that I should be watching these whole games on Twitch after the fact. If any of you have been stupid like me and been like, I don't know what to do, they're at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're all on Twitch. Go to the official Twitch channel. Watch the videos if you want to watch the entire game as you're getting your coffee ready in the morning. You can and you should.
Yeah, ESPN, I think, is even replaying them in the afternoon. But tomorrow's doubleheader, I can't wait. I can't remember who's playing, but at 3:30 a.m. there's a game, and at 11 p.m. Saturday night there's a game. So don't miss the doubleheader that is separated by quick math, almost 20 hours. Yes. So it's a doubleheader, you know.
The only thing in between them.
It's a twi-day. It's a twi-day doubleheader, not twi-night, twi-day.
Twi-day. You know, one thing I don't think you can bet on, but how dope would it be if we could cross these 2 things over, is WGT. We've got to figure that out because we got a big tournament coming up on Sunday. What is the Tahopen? God, we're clever. Aren't we just the cleverest people? We've named it the Tahopen. It's a 9-hole closest to the whole tournament that was specifically set up for Adam Mares to beat you. So do not let him win. Anyone that can show up and beat Adam will get a high five from me. If you place above Adam Mares this weekend in the WGT and then swing by the DNVR bar whenever it's open, whenever that happens in the world, I will buy you a Breck brew at the DNVR bar if you place higher than Adam Mares in WGT this weekend. Send me the screenshot of it. If you're wondering what in the hell we're talking about, WGT is the most popular free golf game in the world, played by over 20 million people, including everybody here at DNVR. You can play closest to the hole, full stroke play on a bunch of famous golf courses, including Pebble Beach, Bethpage Black, St. Andrews, Wolf Creek. You can pretty much challenge us anytime you want. We're doing weekly tournaments on Sundays. Make sure that you join our country club where all the cool kids hang out. Go to dnvrgolf.com. You can download it again, totally free for your phone, for your computer. It's a great way to either spend some time relaxing or get really into something and squash your foes, whichever way you want to go.
It's a lot of fun, and I recommend you practicing before you log into the tournament, because I made that mistake on our last little tourney and I wasn't even rusty. I just wasn't mentally prepared. I literally woke up in bed. My wife had already gotten up, and I'm like, I'm just going to knock this out right now. And I got a 10 spot. I've never even gotten a 7 since like my first day of playing, and I got a 10 spot hung on me. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And so if you're not good at putting, this is perfect for you, because it's really just about your drive. Not personally, like with your motivation, but your drive off the tee and reading the winds. Yeah, and picking the right club. Like, that's really all that it's about. So this one will be interesting to see. I think it's really going to be anyone's contest.
Oh, man, that's brutal. A guy, Reese, coming in saying, I play golf at Northern Illinois and our season got canceled. Couldn't imagine what these baseball players are going through. I mean, it seems like you probably could, actually, as much, if not more than, seems like you'd be in a pretty great position to imagine what they're going through. And, you know, I wasn't going to jump into that too much today. I wanted to get into the history of it, but just judging based on the timing and on the lack of research that I've done for the other thing, I'm thinking maybe we'll talk about this a little bit, Patrick, because it's something that people are getting into. Yeah, trying to prepare for the draft, all of it. There's a lot of people in a tough spot, and we've seen over the last couple of days, I think, some emotions boil over on both sides. You've seen some remarks from Blake Snell that went viral. You've seen some owners kind of snapping back. Trevor Bauer has gone out to do his thing. So, you know, I'll give my thoughts real quickly, and then Patrick, I want to get you in on this as well. But I'll say this: Major League Baseball needs a better system in place than, well, if you're concerned, then you don't have to play. That's where I'm at right now. I see a lot of this stuff going on. I think there's a lot of complications when it comes to what the owners have asked the players to take in terms of pay cuts, and then what they've asked them to take on top of that in terms of revenue sharing, whether or not it makes sense. Like, I mean, Blake Snell did a horrible job of articulating a point that had some merit. You lose people when you start saying, imagine my sorrow. No one feels bad for you. And Major League ball players need to understand that, but that doesn't mean that they can't stand on a correct principle. It doesn't mean they have to cave to the owners. But I think we're going to see this play out more and more. And the thing that I keep coming back to, like I said, Patrick, I'll get you in after this, is just there needs to be a better solution than, well, if you don't want to play, then you don't get to, or you don't have to, and you get no pay, and we're taking everybody else, and you guys can stay over there. Like, that's not, and for Rockies fans in particular, if guys who are potentially health compromised just can't play, you don't get your starting center fielder, David Dahl, and you don't get your closer, Scott Oberg. Those are the two guys we know for sure would not be allowed to play. So I know everyone wants baseball back. I know we're all frustrated, but keep those things in mind. I don't know that the best way to move forward is to say, well, anyone who can't. We're moving forward. Sorry, David and Scott. Stay home.
Yeah. And we don't know that they can't per se. It would just be maybe recommended that,
Right.
hey, you know what, it probably would be in your best interest to not play, but we couldn't force you. If David Dahl, again, it's that freedom, like, well, do you want to thrive or do you want to survive? And I think that's that line of, well, how do we communicate that? Some people just want to have the option to survive because they're scared by this, and rightfully so, and they don't want to open themselves up to, you know, death ultimately, or whether it's not to themselves, but it's to their family. Yeah, it's a no-win conversation of, well, you're making this much money, so who cares? It's you know, there's probably a thin line. I don't know how thin it is or how gray it is between, you know, players and the birth of their child, and say, hey, come on, you're getting paid $15 million a year. You need to be there for that game against the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw's on the hill. We need you in the lineup. Don't be going, you know, back home for the birth of your child. Really? Like, that's that's not right. We're talking about lives. Like, we know these players, you know, they should be home for the birth of their child. Like, we live in the 21st century where we should be able to discern between someone maybe, you know, just trying to take advantage of a system or something like that, and the rights that are just due to us as human beings, like seeing the birth of your child or not going into an unsafe work environment. So there's a lot to be worked out, and it could be really troublesome because it's just not known. And even if we start to see numbers improve in regards to COVID-19 in the next couple weeks, and we say, you know, we the scientists, the people who actually know what's going on, they're looking at data. They're neither Republican nor Democrat nor libertarian. They're literally scientists. Even if they can show us numbers that suggest things are going to be fine for the summer, it's not perfect, but they're going to be really good in the summer if we take these precautions. There's no guarantee that, you know, once we get a little cold snap at the beginning of the fall and autumn, and, you know, once we're getting to the playoffs, and now what happens? Now do we not have playoffs? Do we have guys leaving in mass, and now the team that's the number one seed doesn't have half their players. I don't know. I don't have answers for these, and I don't know that MLB does either.
And none of the leagues do, and it's the one thing that keeps being brought up, and I feel like I've seen a couple people respond to it this way, right? The question keeps being asked. Okay, let's say everything feels safe, looks good. We get back out there, we're doing the thing. We play game one. Rockies play the Diamondbacks. And after the game, it turns out that player X, I'm not going to say a name. That's just not fair. You just go, player X is for the Diamondbacks has tested positive for COVID. Okay. Now he's got to go in quarantine. Does everybody he interacted with that day? Are the Diamondbacks now out? Can they not play anymore? Can they just not play anymore with that one guy? If it does go through their whole team, is it sorry you're out? Or what about the other team? There was surely some interaction there. So now one team can't play baseball for 2 weeks because the team they were playing against had a guy. And those are the things that I don't think it just takes one thing like that, because I've seen people respond to it and go like, hey, look, it's like an injury. If it turns out you're playing down there, you get COVID, you're out 2 weeks, then you're out 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, but if you break your leg, that doesn't mean that everybody else on the team could very easily contract your broken leg. That is not how it works.
No, those injuries are definitely not contagious. And you know,
sorry, just
no, you go.
I just want to say real quickly, and the clubhouse attendants and security guards and custodians and ushers, like, you may think to yourself, like, well, whatever, if they get sick, they're ball players, they're young, they're healthy, they're rich, whatever. The number of normies of us regular people, media, that how many times have I shook whoever's hand? Hey, thanks, fist bump, whatever. Throughout the day, touching is a big part of baseball. It's just, there's a lot of hand grabbing, butt slapping. It goes on. And so it's not just the players. You need security guards and ushers and clubhouse attendants. And the Rockies have some phenomenal clubhouse attendants. And if you get Tiny sick, I'm going to be very upset about it. We love that man. And he doesn't have Nolan Arenado money.
He does not. He does not. He he's a saying, Tiny's the best. It's a difficult time to really navigate. I know at the beginning of this, when Major League Baseball was trying to come up with plans to have a season, I was really opposed to it at that time, because it was very much about this survival thing. And it came across at that time as like, all right, well, this is going to pass, or it's not a big deal, or we're just going to go about business as usual and get back. And we hadn't really hit the peak of everything. And it was like, whoa, that's really sending the wrong message. But ultimately what they were doing was, they're just, hey, look, we got to figure something out. If it goes well, here's our plan. If it doesn't go well, we're not doing that plan, right? They're just straight up not doing it. So we still don't know what MLB is going to do. The MLB draft, just like the NFL draft, they can do that just like we are able to have podcasts for you daily and live, like we are right now. Or if you're listening to the podcast after the fact on Friday afternoon, again, that doesn't matter, because again, we don't need to be together for that. So Major League Baseball can pivot, but they do need to plan, and I get that, so I can respect that. And I don't think they've really gotten any backlash. It's really just been from the players saying, well, what are the specifics? Because it's all good and well for you and I to talk about the potential of a season, and all right, what would it look like? What about the divisions? What about the teams? How many games? How many playoffs? But the players are thinking about it. Well, what about the minutia of who's going to be allowed there? You know, it's bad enough that we're going to be forced into these closed, stuffy locker rooms around these other people that I have to hope and trust they're making good choices when they're away from the game. But now there's going to be press there, and sure, even if they're far away, you know, what precautions are taken that they're okay, and do we have the equipment to do all those things? There are so many details that are going to, so many T's that will need to be crossed, so many lowercase J's that will need to be dotted in order for us to really make sure this is safe. And even then, as you mentioned, there's no guarantee. It's a wild time to be alive. I don't think anyone's ever said that before, but there you go.
No, these are every commercial. These are trying times. And if you want to make it out of these trying times, go to MSU Denver online. You get yourself, look, it's straight up of all the places you could go, get yourself nice and set to reattack the world once it's ready to be reattacked. MSU Denver online has got to be near the top of that list, whether you're trying to finish out a degree, start one up, just kind of get some vocational work done, learn a new skill. You can do all of it. They've got, whether it's full programs, individual classes, all kinds of stuff, pretty much anything that you can think of, a ton of Colorado native alumni out of that place. I've taken some classes at MSU way back in the day, but still I took I took musical theory there for a little while when I was doing the music thing, made me a much better musician in my days, took me from a guy playing in my basement to a guy playing in front of empty crowds. But you know, I learned a lot. I absolutely cherished my time just being able to go through kind of mostly at my own pace, and doing those online courses really helped me at a time when I couldn't be going out to school, where a lot of us right now either can't or don't feel especially comfortable. So check them out at MSU Denver. Whoa, where is it? There's lots of things. It's msudenver.edu/online. I'm going to delay our conversation on the fun facts of history because we got one more question here that I think is a good place to just start. And we already I've put the draft up and I want to wrap up before too long. But Reese, since you've hung out, you've been such a good viewer of the live here, and we've put it on the board, as it were. He asks, do you think we take the best player on the board with our first pick or take the best pitcher available? I think the Rockies will most likely take who they think is the best player on the board. If it was up to me, I would take pitching. I would take 5 pitchers, but there's probably a good reason it's not up to me. And that has nothing to do, by the way, with need and everything to do with a history of the Rockies finding position players of quality throughout any number of rounds of the draft. Your Ryan Spilborghs, your Corey Sullivan, your Seth Smith, at least decent guys. The Rockies can get good position players. Landing DJ LeMahieu is an also-ran, and he turns into a perennial all-star. Pitching has been by far the biggest bugaboo of the franchise. You need numbers. You need homegrown pitchers. You need pitchers who are used to altitude, though you may not be able to train them at altitude anymore if we're not going to have minor league teams in Colorado. But I would take pitching. Patrick, your thoughts?
Yeah, they would be do well to find the next Alex Klanowski out of Northern Illinois University. It'd be a shout out for our guy Reese. Go Huskies! But I think really the best player available is probably the best shot, seeing as though they do have the 9th pick, and there very well could be some players that on their board it could be their number one guy. You know, I would think if they had the first pick, or rather if Spencer Torkelson, for some strange reason, were not to be selected, I think the Rockies would take him, right? Because even though he plays first base and you've just drafted first baseman, the last two first rounds of the 2018-2019 draft with Grant Levine and Michael Toglia, you take the best player who's there if it's, you know, so undoubtedly obvious, right? But Torkelson won't be there for him. Emerson Hancock, you know, won't be available either. Same thing with Austin Martin out of University of Vanderbilt. So Asa Lacy will be gone. So, I mean, you got 4 guys right there that are almost guaranteed locks to go within the top 5. And, you know, there's still going to be some really quality players. And it's debatable. What does it mean for a player to be the best? Because if it's a high school player, high school players aren't as good as college level players. But you say, well, give me 2 years, and at 20 years old or 21 years old, they're going to be just as good, if not better, than 22. One thing that they, I think they like drafting good organizational players, right? And I don't think you necessarily need to do that in the first round, but one guy that I've heard that they have some interest in is Garrett Mitchell out of UCLA, who would pair really nicely with Michael Togli, as they, were previously teammates. But the one issue with Garrett Mitchell, much like you mentioned before earlier, Drew, is this idea of compromised immune system, right? We see that with David Dahl, not having a spleen,
No spleen.
right? Splenectomy.
Spleenless.
Um,
Spleenless in
Garrett Mitchell also, has that going on as well. Similarly, as I'm drawing a blank as to his system. I believe he has his type 2 diabetes. My apologies. I'm not exactly sure.
This is the kind of information we'll have right on draft day.
Well, right. He's again one of those guys that, again, for Colorado, that might not really be the fit, even though he's, a very, very talented guy. And it might not be a factor for him at all, just because you have something like leukemia. Look at Roman Reigns in WWE. He's still able to conduct his business at an incredibly high level for so long, and other players have various.
John Lester.
Sure, battling back from cancer, and we are Colorado's own Chad Bettis has done it. So it's not a death sentence, and it's not anything to say, you know what, this is a guy we should avoid at all costs, because maybe you are able to sign or draft a guy like Mitchell and get him at somewhat of a discount. And now your 35th pick overall in the compensation round at the back end of the first, is that much better. So a lot of baseball is about quantity, because we could go back in every single draft and look and say, how did you miss that guy? How did you miss this guy in the 8th round? 7 rounds of guys were taken before him. So, I mean, Mike Draft was the 27th overall pick. So what happened with the 26 teams? It's really not 26, because the Angels took Randall Grichuk at 26, but you know what I mean? And it's like, that happens, right? There's so much variability in all sports, but in baseball, most particularly. Mike Piazza, Hall of Famer, was drafted as a favor, to his godfather, Tommy Lasorda. You never know. There's been first overall picks that have Mark Appel most recently, never even made it to the majors. He's retired. He's done. Never even made it to the majors. He's first overall pick. So
over Chris Bryant and John Gray.
Yeah.
Yep. It's in a way that makes it almost more intriguing and exciting, because we really don't know. These guys could be anywhere from total flameouts to Hall of Famers, and in any round, really, like you said, Mike Piazza, Albert Pujols, another guy who was never a high round pick, never even like a super promoted prospect, and then he was just the greatest right-handed hitter who ever lived for a decade. It was
went to community college, went to a junior college. He didn't go to a major university.
Yeah,
and that'll be part of the stuff we'll break down too, is that there are almost 3 different levels, in a sense, where you got high school players, you've got the Division I guys, and you still have Division II, Division III guys. Look at Brenton Doyle last year. He was the first D3 guy that was taken, was a big prospect. Go back and listen to our podcast with Kyle Kercheval from the Grand Junction Rockies, as their broadcaster was glowing on his report about Doyle. And then you kind of have the junior colleges, because that's a spot where a guy can increase his value and then either go to a Division I school after a year or two, or if he gets drafted, he can go right in. So you can have the best of both worlds in a lot of ways. And
Bryce Harper JUCO'd.
That's right. Yeah, he also graduated a year early from high school.
Yeah, that's a unique story, but yeah.
yeah. But that's what allowed him, because he wanted to get a year of college experience, under his belt. And if he had committed to a university, he would have been there for 3 years. So you can go to a junior college, and so we'll break all of that stuff down.
In Grand Junction, in the JUCO World Series, because that's where it's held, the Junior College World Series in Grand Junction, Colorado, at Sam Saplizio Field. Bryce Harper with a metal bat. I saw it with my own eyes. Guy was hitting stuff into the parking lot. They were saying it went 500 feet. I have no idea how they measured stuff there, but it's certainly the farthest I've ever seen to this day anybody. Now, when I go down and even when Sam Hilliard's, doing a home run derby, they got wood bats and they're crushing them and they're showing off. But Bryce Harper with a metal bat in a place at altitude where it's dry and there was no humidor is about as far as I've ever seen a human being hit a baseball. What was he, 18, 19 years old, Mom? You were there. She's in the comments now. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a freak. In some ways, he still is a freak. But again, very clearly the first overall pick. Is he still a freak? Well, remember the days in which the conversation was Mike Trout or Bryce Harper, and it's like now it's Bryce Harper and Trevor Story.
Yeah, sort of more of that JD
Trevor Story.
Yeah.
Right? Who would you rather have, Bryce Harper or Trevor Story?
Right.
Trevor Story.
Trev, probably for positional reasons, yeah.
Sure.
I am a Bryce Harper defender, and I've always felt like that was a tough bar to be graded on. You're not as good as Mike Trout. That's kind of rough. Like Bryce Harper is still one of the 20 best players, 25 best players in Major League Baseball.
Maybe 25th. But do the numbers back it up is the other piece, and that's where you get to the conversation.
And yeah, now this last year he struck out a ton and didn't hit as well, but he was getting walked a lot. Guys aren't giving him anything his first year in Philly. I don't know. But the power in walking and the tool set. Like at the end of the day, give me a guy that can do all the things, even if he's not doing them all right now. And that's always been the thing with Harper, right? He's got a great arm. He can run. He can hit for power. He's got a pretty good eye. Some years he just strikes out too much and doesn't seem to run the ball out well in the outfield. I don't know what the deal is, but
how old do you think Bryce Harper is? Initial thought.
Like 27.
Nailed it. Very good.
Yeah.
I didn't have a thought, but I was looking. I'm like, well, I know he's young because he's been around forever, right?
Right.
Even he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He's in high school as a baseball player. Like that was the last time I think Sports Illustrated even cared about baseball. That was their jump the shark moment, maybe even possibly. But yeah, he's been a thing since then, and yeah, 8 seasons in the majors. Some good, some okay, some injury plagued, almost all injury plagued. Yeah. But yeah, he's still only 27. And he still has 27 more years left on his contract.
That's right.
With no
trades. Most importantly, he got his wish and brought a championship to DC.
That's right.
And of course, my mother can't let us forget that both Kirby Puckett and Paul Molitor also played at JUCO. So there you have it. Cool. Well, we'll have a lot more fun stuff to do on the next couple of podcasts. That was good. That was more draft talk than I thought we were going to do, but we're getting excited for it. We're getting ready for it. We'll have more details for you as soon as we, iron them out. That's how that works. So thanks everyone so much for hanging out with us for this one during the live chat, or if you're just listening after the fact, we really appreciate it. We want to hit us up with some questions. You know how to do that on social media. Go to the website, leave them here on the podcast page. Either way, just let us know your thoughts. We'll do our best to make sure that we can talk about them here on the podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to the DNVR.com and get yourself some cool merch. We got like this hat I'm wearing right now. I don't know what our special is right now, but we've got specials every week. And just keep, supporting all of our sponsors during this time. We really appreciate it. It helps them out. It helps us out. And it helps you out. Triple help.
We even have masks now, too. There's been a big outcry for folks now. With everyone's got masks, I think. Well, yeah, pretty much everybody has masks. If you don't, you really haven't been trying, and you haven't watched any of the tutorials on how to do it, right? Because you can learn how to make it very easily. And now people are going, all right, I want to step my game up. I want a stylized one. We got them now. DNVR, we got our logo right on that. So you can do that in style because that's the world that we live in now. So go for it, do that, support us, because we are a local business and we definitely could use that support. So we're glad to help you look good as you walk around town and behave responsibly.
Absolutely. 100%. Thank you all. Be safe out there. Continue to be absolutely awesome. Rocking your DNVR mask. We will continue to be absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark. Bye.